Welcome to Side Streets. I'm Meg Rothgery.
And I'm Jeff Wisniewski.
Side Streets is a production of Gannon University in cooperation with Erie Cablevision.
Side Streets can be seen every Friday at 2 p.m. and 7:30 p.m.
The harvest season is upon us, and for some that means raking leaves, but for others it means cranking up the cider mills.
We'll take a look at the cider making process, but first here's Scott Powell with the news.
Thank you, Meg. Erie City Council cannot agree on recommendations to make to Erie's Planning Commission or the city's waterfront comprehensive plan. During the same meeting, council members said that they were excited about a proposed $120 million development called Perry's Landing, but it would not commit themselves to rezoning as requested by the project's developer. The Design Review Board said it would act in review of specific projects to decide whether proposals would enhance the general Bayfront development plan or violate its spirit. Earlier, Herman Weber Jr. of Weber Murphy Fox Developers asked council members to rezone the former Perry shipbuilding docks and United Refining property to allow construction to get underway on Perry Landing. A 90-acre marina, condominium, hotel, restaurant, and park complex to be built in several different stages. Presently, the area is zoned for heavy industrial use, but a general business district designation is required before work can begin. Once the new waterfront comprehensive plan and its zoning amendments are adopted, Weber told council his firm will abide by any new zone requirements. The amendments call for a new waterfront residential and waterfront commercial designation. Members of council are also waiting for a legal opinion about the fate of 4 streets, Liberty, Plum, Cascade, and Raspberry, that were closed to traffic below the bluff since 1952. Some council members believe that the pending legislation, if left hanging long enough, could subject council to a lawsuit by developers anxious to begin work along the Bayfront. Now, here's Diane Pilatus with Mayor Tullio's press conference.
I'm Diana Pilatus.
And I'm Erin Scully for Side Streets News.
Democratic Senator Ted Kennedy of Massachusetts was in Erie Thursday morning to support U.S. Representative Bob Edgar for the U.S. Senate.
Ted Kennedy.
Mayor Tullio was at the 9 o'clock breakfast and press conference at the Martin Luther King Center, where Kennedy spent about 2 hours in Erie welcoming supporters of Bob Edgar and the Democratic Party. And now back to Scott with the latest report on this week's City Council meeting.
Wednesday evening, Erie City Council members met. Congressman Tom Ridge opened the meeting. Ridge appeared to discuss federal legislation and financial aspects as it pertains to city matters, at the request of Councilman Robert Brabender, in order that city members may be able to be better informed of legislation that will aid them in up-and-coming budget discussions. Also, City Council members held a public hearing to discuss a request from the Erie Parking Authority to increase parking rates at certain ramps and parking areas which would be effective January 1st, 1987. Ron Cleaver of the Parking Authority said that the rate increase was necessary. The increase of 100% would be for certain ramps, including the St. Vincent's Hospital ramp and the Hammett Medical Center ramp, In addition, parking violators will be subject to a 100% increase. In contrast, individual parking meters would not be affected. In opposition to the action was Sam Sherman of the Downtown Now organization. Sherman said that the legislation would impose additional expenses on downtown workers and deter new businesses from locating there. Council is scheduled to vote on that issue next Wednesday. In Washington, scientists reported that the dramatic depletion of ozone in the atmosphere over Antarctica is nature's gentle warning that similar depletions can occur elsewhere in the world. Members of an expedition working on the polar cap speaking to a briefing in Washington via satellite from McMurdo Station, a research facility in Antarctica, said they had strong evidence to show that the area of depleted ozone is caused by a chemical process rather than winds or solar activity. Susan Solomon, leader of the 13-man expedition, said man-made chemicals, like those in aerosols, might be among the causes of low ozone levels. The ozone layer is located about 20 to 30 miles above the Earth's surface and is vital to humans because it filters out deadly ultraviolet radiation. Satellites first detected a hole in the ozone layer over Antarctica in May of 1985. The hole, which is roughly equal in size to the area of the United States, has appeared each October for a decade during the polar springtime. Data collected from the satellite indicates that 50% less ozone was observed in 1985 than in 1975. The research team, which is made up of scientists from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, the University of Wyoming, and the State University of New York, concluded that the hole's annual appearance in October might be associated with the springtime evaporation of polar clouds in the stratosphere. Scientists had earlier believed that the brilliant spring sunshine followed by the darkness of polar winter caused the ozone depletion. In Managua, Nicaragua, the leftist Sandinista government brought Eugene Hasenfus before a revolutionary court and charged him with terrorism and violating public order on behalf of the United States government. If convicted by the People's Tribunal, Hasenfus faces up to 30 years in prison. He was captured October 6th by Sandinista troops who shot down a cargo plane ferrying supplies to U.S.-backed Contra rebels. Nicaragua charged that the United States had violated the sacred basic principles of our internal laws and the charters of the United Nations and the Organization of American States and other treaties in force, as well as the basic principles of customary international law. Written charges against Hasenfus were presented by Justice Minister Rodrigo Reyes. Reyes says the charges were violating the public order, security, criminal association, and terrorism. The Justice Minister said government documents turned over to the court included Hasenfus' confession. Hasenfus' Nicaraguan defense lawyer, Enrique Borgen, criticized the government for making it impossible to see Hasenfus before the trial began. Borgen said Hasenfus is in a legally indefensible position because he has been unable to see his attorney before the trial. Hasenfus of Marionette, Wisconsin, was captured a day after a C-123 cargo plane was shot down by Sandinista troops. 3 others were on board. 2 Americans and a third, still not identified, were killed. And yet another American was taken and kidnapped in Lebanon. The Revolutionary Justice Organization, a group loyal to Iran, identified the hostage as Edwin A. Tracy, an author of children's books from Rutland, Vermont. The group apparently believes Tracy was working for the CIA. No further information has been released concerning Tracy's condition or where he is being held. Finally, Penelec customers will be experiencing a small billing decrease. The electric company was asking a $38.1 million increase and was only granted a rate hike of $5 million. On the average, Penelec customers will save 35 cents per month. Penelec serves over 1/2 million customers in 31 Pennsylvania counties. That's the news. I'm Scott Powell. Now here's Jeff and Meg.
Thank you, Scott. As we mentioned earlier, the harvest season is upon us.
Ah, I'm so thirsty. I wish I could make some apple cider.
How are you going to do that? You don't know how to make apple cider.
Well, you're right, I don't. But Side Street's executive producer, Mary Carol Genschmer, and Side Street's reporter, Ron Cieslikowski, traveled to Arendale Farms in Northeast to find out exactly what is involved in the cider making process.
Since the autumn breezes are putting a real bite into the Erie area, and the gray of winter isn't too far behind, we sent a crew out to find some of the last brilliant colors of fall. And traveling out Route 20 to just east of Northeast, we ran into Arendale Farms and Cider Mill to find out just how this becomes this. The business is owned and operated by the Schultz family. We talked to Mike Schultz about the fruit and cider business.
We grow mostly grapes, and we grow apples. That's all we grow.
And where do you get the rest of, like, the pumpkins?
We buy it from other local farmers in the neighborhood.
Okay. Are you open all year round, or is there a specific season that you're open?
No, we're open from about mid-August until Thanksgiving.
Okay. Do you find the climate out here in Northeast best for growing the apples and all this type?
Well, the reason we're here is, for one thing, the soil here is good for grapes and apples. And the other thing is that we're close enough to Lake Erie that we get the lake effect climate. We have a little microclimate here. And if you get another mile or so away from the lake, you can't grow fruit.
All right. Why exactly did you go into the business of, say, a cider mill or an apple farmer?
I got out of school, and I really didn't plan on being a farmer, but I gave it a try for a few years, and I liked it, so I stayed.
The cider mill is relatively new to the Schultz family business. The process involves moving the apples through a wash into a grinder. The mash is then packed into forms lined with cloth and then pressed to produce the sweet amber nectar, cider. The drink changes flavor slightly throughout the season depending on the types and combination of apples used and the particular point of sweetness when they are pressed.
Right now we're using Red Delicious, Yellow Delicious, Cortland's, McIntosh, Ida Reds. That's some Empire, but it changes as the season goes on. As different apples get ripe, we use a different mixture.
Do you use them right at the peak of their ripeness, or when they're a little overripe or underripe? Or?
Well, they should be right at the peak. If they're underripe, the cider's too tart, the skins are too sour, and that gives it a green taste. If they're overripe, it makes it a little too sweet. It gets syrupy. Like, especially later in the season, we don't use any Red Delicious because they get too sweet, and you just get too much sugar in it for most people.
At any rate, this batch is delicious. For Side Streets, I'm Ron Cieslikowski, sipping cider, sitting beside her.
That is so interesting. The cider making process is a lot more involved than most people think.
Well, Meg, why don't you tell everyone that we were so curious about cider making that we traveled to Thomson's farm market in Northeast to have a look for ourselves.
I would, Jeff, but you just did. But you forgot to mention, not only did we find apple cider, we found fruits, vegetables, and these.
Spring harvest season with pumpkins, Indian corn, and apple cider.
While traveling down Route 20, we came across Thomson's Farm Market and Cider Mill. I've got my pumpkin. Let's go inside and see what else we can find.
Once inside, we found a wide selection to choose from. We found squash, corn, and even honey. Thomson's Farm Market attracts customers of during their season, which runs from May through November.
While we were at the farm market, Bob Thomson gave us a brief history of the farm.
In '65 with my grandfather and dad. And approximately 3 seasons ago, we took over this premises here when we got involved in juice processing and apple cider and so on.
What was here when you first started?
Basically what's here now. It was just the previous owner had sold out of business and we took over, and we continued on with farm market sales with apples and vegetables and so on.
As the
It's caused a lot of headaches, yes. We had an extremely wet June, and that sort of caused problems, particularly with truck gardeners, the vegetable people. They planted sometimes 2 and 3 times and with no success. And then, of course, July and August were extremely dry. We thought we had things going fairly well, and then the rains came in September, and just all the apples, the grapes, soaked the water up to quite an extreme and caused cracking problems and rotting problems. We've had a heck of a time with disease. Fungus disease, of course, hits when this happens. And so it's been a not fun year.
Then Mary Ann Thomson explained the Thomson's process of picking and sorting the apples.
Bring in a bulk bin of apples and put them into a large water dumper, which then floats the apples up onto a conveyor belt, dumping them onto another conveyor belt that brushes them, and another sponge conveyor belt, which sizes the apples. Some of the apples are small that go right into juice to my right here, and this right now we have left wide open so that we can sort out the larger apples for baskets and seconds for making sauce and pies.
Mrs. Thomson, can you explain to us the process of the cider mill?
Yes, the apples are brought into a hopper outside of the cider mill and dumped into that hopper and brought up a chute being washed and down into a crusher and then pumped up into the upper portion of the building, the ground up bar, and then they come down through a chute into the pan which you see there, where the apples are being called racking the cheese for making cider. And the apples yield about 3 gallons of cider per bushel of crushed apples, and they will continue to build a layer of probably 8 to 10 racks high, and then the cider rack is moved over to the press where it is put under pressure and the juice from the apples is squeezed out and then put into our holding tanks and our coolers.
We were fortunate enough to taste some of the cider right after it was pressed. Boy, was it good.
Aside from pressing apples, the Thomsons also press.
Do you press yourself?
Yes. A Vaseline press that we press for approximately 24 varieties of grapes that are grown in this area, and they're stored in tanks in the back and then brought over here for sales, where people from as far as West Virginia, Kentucky, Connecticut come and fill up their barrels, their carboys, with fresh grape juice for their own home winemaking.
When Meg nearly fell over from smelling the wine, we knew we had better call it a day.
So we grabbed our pumpkin, our cider, and our grapes and drove off into the sunset.
For Side Streets,
I'm Meg Rothgery.
and I'm Jeff Wisniewski.
And now, back by popular demand, we have decided to continue last year's tradition of rolling the cultural calendar. Jeff, did you know that October is also Fire Prevention Month?
Yes, and this week, Side Streets reporters Joe Lang, Joe Brunzak, and Scott Powell went to the Erie Firefighters Historical Museum to take a nostalgic look at fire prevention.
Mr. Richard Robb of the Firefighters Museum. Mr. Robb, when exactly was the museum opened?
Well, the museum was opened here on May the 3rd, 1976. And we're open during the summer hours, mainly. And we have tours for the kids and the families, whoever else wants to come in. We're open Saturday and Sundays. From Saturdays are from 10 in the morning until 5 in the afternoon. Sunday hours are from 1 up until 5 in the afternoon.
Could you explain some of the pieces here in the museum?
Right here, right behind you here, we have an old piece. I don't know whether your camera can pick it up or not, but this is a hose cart that was used by the Fuller Hose Company in Northeast 100 years ago. They just celebrated their 100th anniversary. And in the background, you see pictures. If your camera can pan a little bit, we have cases with ribbons and badges in. We have masks, we have uniforms, we have fire apparatus, you name it. If it's in the fire service, we have it.
What exactly is your job here at the museum?
Well, I was the co-founder, and right now I am the president, and I take care of most of the tours that come in, and along with the wives and the board, their members. We take care of the tours.
What exactly is the oldest thing that you have here at the museum?
The oldest item we have in the museum at the present time is a 1823 hand-carried pump that was used by the Warren Fire Department. And it still works, by the way. If you want to put water in it, why, we can get water out of it. So that's the oldest thing. And then we come up from there, right up. The newest piece of equipment would be a 1926 pumper that we have. That's the newest item we have. So, and then we have everything in there between as far as dates go. So we go back to 1800s on a lot of this stuff. We have Erie Fire Department's second pumper that they had. That dates back to 1830. That was used in Erie. And right now it's owned by the Waterford Fire Department. And it's easy on the gas.
Yeah.
No, not like your modern rigs are. The gas goes down in there fast. This one here goes a long time.
Oh, it's beautiful. Thank you very much, Mr. Robb.
Happy to have you here, and you come back again.
Thank you very much. For Side Streets, this is Scott Powell.
Meg, guess what time it is?
Is this a trick question?
No.
I know it's time to rake leaves, but other than that, I give up.
It's time for Side Street Skits.
That's right. And this week, we're going to be taking the whole family to the World Series game.
Season is ending. The family decided to take a ride out to the old ballpark to catch a little baseball fever. Before they go, let's introduce you to the family. First, there's Bill, the family patriarch, the stable one of the family. Next, there's Roxanne, the girl who dreams of being a rock and roll star. Next to her, Susie, better known around the neighborhood as Susie the Floozy. Need I say more? Oh no, here's Butch, the tough guy of the clan. He was voted most likely to say to Dirty Harry, "Come on, go ahead, make my day." Ah, here's Muffy and Buffy, the twins. The most important thing in their lives is making sure the right wine is served at dinner. And here's Melvin, the family idiot. So stupid he tried to eat the whole in a lifesaver. And finally, here's Uncle Sylvester, Uncle Sly for short. Recently released from the hospital, shall we say. And there they are, the family. Now let's go to the game. Here they are, enjoying the game. Let's see what happens.
Where's your pussycat? No! Which one's your son? Your mother's a woman! I missed.
Of course, a baseball tradition is to sing "Take Me Out to the Ball Game," and this family is no different.
Oh, dear, take me out to the crowd. Riding some peanuts and cracker jacks. I don't care if I ever get back to lifting. Root, root for the home team. Take away the shame. One, two, three strikes around the old ball game.
It is the bottom of the ninth. The home team trails by 3 runs, 2 out, bases loaded. Here's the pitch. Grand Slam won the game for the home team. Boy, that was exciting. But now it's time to go home. Until the next time, goodbye.
And you? What do you want, huh? You big jerk! I hate you! Leave me alone! Who do you think I am, Sean Penn? Get out of here! Get out of here!
Well, I don't know about you, Meg, but I've got apple cider to drink.
And I have to rake the leaves. So we'd better say goodbye. And remember, whether you live on Yen or Young,
Or Yale or York. We'll see you next week on Side Streets. And be sure to tune in because we'll have a Halloween surprise for you.
for Side Streets, I'm Meg Rothgery.
And I'm Jeff Wisniewski.
Have a good week.